Listen closely, for few understand the chains that others' opinions place upon the mind. Most live as prisoners, bending, twisting, and suffering under the weight of what others think. But the wise, those who wish to rise above, know that true freedom is born not from the approval of men, but from mastery over oneself. Today, I will reveal the cold, unshakable strategies to silence the noise, to sharpen your mind, and to act with complete independence. Learn to walk alone, unbothered, and untouchable, and you will possess the greatest power of all. Freedom of thought. Power is never granted to those who allow themselves to be swayed by the opinions of others. A mind that trembles at the whisper of praise or shudders at the echo of criticism is a mind enslaved. Those who wish to rise above the petty intrigues and the fickle judgments of society must first understand that freedom begins with detachment. To allow the thoughts of men to dictate one's actions is to relinquish authority over one's own life, surrendering the reins to forces outside one's control. The detached mind does not live to appease, nor does it bend under the burden of admiration or reproach. It is guided by purpose, clarity, and a vision that transcends the fleeting tides of social opinion. Every individual who seeks influence must cultivate this indifference, for it is the cornerstone of strength. In observing the world, one sees that those who are ruled by the need for validation act predictably. Their decisions are compromised by fear of disapproval or hope of acclaim, leaving them vulnerable to manipulation. A leader who understands the necessity of detachment acts with precision, moving swiftly and deliberately, unaffected by the applause of the masses or the whispers of dissent. This does not imply a lack of awareness or emotion, but rather a mastery over them, a conscious refusal to allow external voices to dictate the course of one's life. Just as a prince who depends on the goodwill of his subjects is at risk of betrayal, so too is the individual who depends on the opinions of others at risk of ruin. The detached mind is fortified against this peril. It perceives the world clearly, calculating the moves of men and events alike without being ensnared by judgment or sentiment. When one detaches from the incessant need for approval, one gains a rare ability to act freely, to pursue goals with unwavering resolve. The strategies, the alliances, the choices one makes are no longer constrained by imagined scrutiny or anticipated disfavor. This freedom allows the mind to innovate, to take calculated risks, and to see opportunities invisible to those blinded by concern for reputation. To be detached is to be sovereign over one's own spirit, to command one's actions rather than be commanded by fear or desire for acceptance. The masses are ever eager to enforce conformity, to press their values and judgments upon those who dare to rise. But the detached mind remains steadfast, immune to the pool of popular sentiment. In cultivating this detachment, one learns to observe without reacting, to consider without yielding, to move with intention rather than impulse. The power of the detached mind lies in its clarity, in its ability to distinguish between what truly matters and what is mere distraction. It is a lens through which reality is seen without distortion, and through which decisions are made, not for the sake of others, but for the sake of one's own purpose. This detachment does not breed cruelty or coldness for its own sake. It is a deliberate, disciplined stance, a conscious refusal to surrender the inner citadel of thought to the whims of the external world. It is in this fortification that one finds strength, independence, and ultimately the authority to shape one's own destiny. Those who grasp this principle rise above the ordinary, for they are guided not by fleeting emotions or the caprice of public opinion, but by a resolute understanding of their own objectives and the clarity to pursue them relentlessly. Emotions are the most dangerous chains a man can wear, for they blind reason and betray intention. Those who act in haste under the sway of anger, fear, or desire are easily manipulated, their minds predictable and their strategies compromised. The wise recognize that, to survive, and ultimately to thrive, one must master the art of emotional detachment. This detachment is not absence of feeling, but control over feeling. The ability to observe the world and respond with precision rather than impulse. Consider the rulers, generals, and statesmen of history who allowed sentiment to govern their choices. Their errors were often fatal, their downfall a testament to the perils of unbridled emotion. The detached mind, in contrast, wields emotion as a tool, a weapon that can be directed with calculated force. When one does not react automatically to provocation or praise, one remains unpredictable, a force that others cannot easily anticipate. This unpredictability is itself power. For those who attempt to manipulate the detached will find no purchase. Every word, every gesture, and every strategy of others is analyzed not with passion, but with calculation, revealing opportunity where the impulsive see only chaos. Emotional detachment allows one to move through the world with clarity, to make decisions free from the distortions of sentiment or the seduction of approval. It is a shield against the influence of others, and a sword that strikes with efficiency, precise and devastating when applied. The individual who masters this art is able to navigate treacherous social and political landscapes, remaining composed even as storms rage around him. Enemies who rely on provocation find their tactics futile, for the detached are impervious to manipulation by insult, fear, or flattery. Friends and allies, too, respect the discipline of a mind that acts independently, knowing that decisions are guided by logic and purpose rather than caprice. Emotional detachment requires rigorous self-discipline, a conscious effort to observe one's impulses and redirect them in service of strategic objectives. Anger, while natural, must be restrained. Fear, while instructive, must not dominate. Desire, while motivating, must not dictate action. By controlling these forces, one transforms what is ordinarily a weakness into a weapon, turning the mind into an instrument of power. Furthermore, detachment cultivates patience, the rare ability to wait for the precise moment to act. For timing is often as decisive as the action itself. The detached individual does not rush, does not react to every slight or temptation, but measures each move with care, striking only when conditions are favorable and advantage assured. In this manner, emotional detachment is inseparable from strategy, for strategy divorced from control is reckless, and control without strategy is stagnant. Mastery of emotion allows one to influence events without becoming enslaved to them, to remain above the fray while still guiding its outcome. The world is filled with those who cannot resist the sway of sentiment, who are quick to quarrel, quick to flatter, and quick to despair. Against such minds, the detached are invincible, for their responses are calculated, deliberate, and unwavering. In essence, emotional detachment is the armor and weapon of the disciplined mind. It grants freedom from the whims of others, insight into the motives of adversaries, and the ability to act with precision where others stumble blindly. By cultivating this cold mastery over the self, one gains an unassailable advantage, moving through life not as a pawn of circumstance or opinion, but as a commander of one's own destiny, untouchable, focused, and unstoppable. To act without observation is to stumble blindly into the designs of others. The untrained mind reacts as a puppet, pulled by every insult, praise, and provocation, its movements predictable and The wise understand that true power is born from the discipline to observe before responding, to measure the currents of circumstance and the intentions of men before committing to action. Observation is the foundation upon which strategy is built. Reaction without it is chaos. In every interaction, whether with friend or foe, the detached mind scans for patterns, motives, and weaknesses, recording without judgment and without haste. By refraining from immediate response, one preserves clarity, ensuring that decisions are governed not by impulse, but by calculated intent. The world is full of those who respond hastily, their anger inflamed by criticism, their pride wounded by insult, their desires swayed by flattery. Such individuals are easily manipulated because their behavior is transparent. They reveal themselves in the heat of reaction. The observer, in contrast, conceals thought and intention, watching the movements of others as a general observes the battlefield. Every word spoken, every gesture made, is a clue, a thread in the fabric of human behavior that, when understood, can be used to advantage. By mastering observation, one gains the ability to anticipate, to prepare, and to strike at the moment of greatest efficacy. Reaction is a weakness because it cedes control. The mind that responds immediately places itself at the mercy of circumstance. Observation, on the other hand, asserts control over circumstance by gathering information, analyzing motive, and awaiting opportunity. The detached observer is not passive, for observation is an active engagement of intellect, a rigorous examination of events and people. It is a constant calculation of risk and reward, advantage and consequence. The mind trained in this discipline learns to remain calm even as others succumb to emotion, to recognize attempts at manipulation, and to discern truth from deception. Silence, in this practice, is often more powerful than speech, and delay more potent than haste. By withholding reaction, the observer maintains freedom, choosing the moment, the method, and the target of action with precision. This approach is particularly effective in environments filled with intrigue, competition, and deception, where impulsive reactions can be exploited. Those who react without thought provide the skilled strategist with opportunities to maneuver, to influence outcomes, and to consolidate power without opposition. Observation, therefore, is a weapon of subtlety and patience. It allows one to control the flow of events by understanding them fully before acting. The detached mind sees beyond surface appearances, discerning the hidden motives that drive behavior and the unseen forces that shape outcomes. In mastering this skill, one becomes untouchable by provocation, immune to the seduction of flattery, and impervious to intimidation. One learns to respond only when action will yield maximum effect, and never when impulse demands it. This is not a denial of emotion, but a command of it, transforming natural tendencies into instruments of strategy. The observer acts from strength, not from weakness, from calculation, not from passion, from foresight, not from reflex. Those who fail to observe are trapped in a cycle of reaction, their lives dictated by the whims of others. The mind that observes first and reacts later claims sovereignty over circumstance, turning the chaos of the world into a landscape of opportunity. In this discipline lies freedom, for the individual who masters observation moves through life untethered by the unpredictability of men, capable of navigating deception, manipulation, and competition with calm, deliberate precision. Observation is the lens through which reality is revealed, the shield that deflects manipulation, and the instrument that ensures every action is measured, purposeful, and decisive. The world is filled with those who scatter their energy in pursuit of the approval of others, who bend to every whim, and who measure their worth by the judgment of those around them. Such individuals are easily swayed, their decisions fractured, their power diluted. True mastery, however, comes from focusing first and foremost on oneself, not out of vanity, but out of necessity. Self-focus is the deliberate practice of cultivating one's own strength, intellect, and strategy, ensuring that one moves through the world with purpose and clarity. It is a common misconception that attending to one's own development is selfish. On the contrary, it is the foundation upon which influence, authority, and effectiveness are built. To ignore the self is to surrender the reins of life to circumstance, chance, and the opinions of men, and those who do so remain forever at the mercy of forces they neither control nor understand. By concentrating on one's own skills, knowledge, and ambitions, a person becomes a force unto themselves, capable of shaping events rather than being shaped by them. The detached focus on the self allows one to act with precision, to pursue goals unclouded by emotion or distraction, and to resist the manipulation of those who seek to exploit the weaknesses of the unprepared. In cultivating self-focus, the individual develops resilience, discipline, and foresight, qualities that are essential in any arena where power, influence, or survival is at stake. This is not an exercise in isolation or indifference to others, but a strategic prioritization of resources. Time, energy, and attention are invested where they yield the greatest returns. Beginning with the cultivation of personal strength, those who fail to prioritize themselves often find their energy drained by trivial disputes, unworthy alliances, and the endless demands of the uninformed. Self-focus, therefore, is a shield against such depletion. It protects the mind and spirit from being scattered and ensures that action is always aligned with long-term objectives. Moreover, a person who masters self-focus becomes capable of discerning what truly matters from what is inconsequential, what is worthy of pursuit from what is merely distracting. This clarity enables decision-making that is both swift and deliberate, informed by principle rather than by impulse, guided by strategy rather than by sentiment. In a world where men are quick to judge and slow to understand, the ability to act independently, to concentrate on one's own objectives, is a form of power in itself. Self-focused cultivates confidence, for the individual knows that their actions are guided by skill, knowledge, and careful deliberation rather than by chance or the opinions of others. It allows one to navigate treacherous social landscapes, political arenas, or competitive environments with poise, ensuring that every step taken is purposeful and advantageous. Furthermore, by concentrating on oneself first, one paradoxically becomes more capable of contributing to others. The disciplined individual is able to extend influence, provide guidance, and enact change, precisely because their foundation is secure. Those who neglect the self, however, operate from weakness, leaving their actions reactive and their contributions ineffective. Self-focus is, therefore, an essential practice for anyone who seeks not merely to survive, but to thrive, to assert control over circumstance, and to achieve mastery over the forces that govern life. It is the cultivation of a personal domain, a deliberate fortification of mind, body, and spirit, which ensures that one is prepared to act decisively when opportunity presents itself. By embracing self-focus, the individual becomes resilient against the distractions, manipulations, and demands of others, remaining steadfast in pursuit of their own objectives. This is not selfishness. It is strategy, discipline, and foresight, transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary, the reactive into the proactive, and the distracted into the decisive. Self-focus is the hidden engine of power, the quiet but unyielding force that allows one to move through life with independence, clarity, and unshakable purpose. Human beings are quick to judge, and yet they understand little. The opinions of men are often formed hastily, colored by envy, fear, desire, and ignorance. To allow these judgments to dictate one's actions is to fall into a trap, for the world is rife with misunderstanding and misinterpretation. Those who seek approval, who bend to avoid criticism, or who act to satisfy the fleeting opinions of others, surrender their freedom and render themselves vulnerable. The illusion lies in believing that the judgment of others carries authority over one's destiny. In truth, it does not. Men speak with passion, but rarely with insight. They act from impulse, bias, and self-interest. Yet their words and actions are often mistaken for guidance. To place one's course in their hands is to surrender control to forces that are neither reliable nor aligned with one's own objectives. The wise recognize that judgment is largely irrelevant, a projection of the observer's own limitations rather than a reflection of reality. Those who allow themselves to be swayed by it act defensively, curtailing their ambitions and compromising their strategy for reasons that hold no intrinsic weight. Freedom is secured only when one acknowledges the emptiness of such judgments and resolves to move according to principle and purpose, rather than to appease the misinformed or the envious. It is the hallmark of the unshakable mind to see beyond appearances, to perceive the world as it is rather than as others claim it to be. Every whisper of criticism, every gesture of disapproval, is examined not as a command, but as information sometimes useful, often trivial, and never binding. By understanding the unreliability of human judgment, one gains the power to act with clarity, to pursue goals unimpeded by the distractions of superficial opinion. Those who fail to recognize this trap are caught in a cycle of reaction and self-doubt, constantly measuring themselves against standards imposed by men whose understanding is limited and whose motives are Their energy is dissipated in endless attempts to satisfy the impossible, leaving them weakened and vulnerable. The individual who sees judgment as illusion, however, maintains composure and confidence, moving forward with purpose, unconcerned with the fleeting approval or condemnation of others. This does not mean one acts without awareness, for observation of others' reactions can reveal strategic insights. But it does mean that such awareness never becomes submission. One learns to discern what is relevant and what is inconsequential, what is a trap and what is an opportunity. By doing so, the detached mind preserves freedom, maintaining sovereignty over thought, decision, and action. Furthermore, the illusion of judgment can be used by the clever strategist to manipulate the expectations of others without surrendering control over oneself. When one recognizes the unreliability and self-interest, inherent in human evaluation. One can navigate the world with advantage, anticipating attempts to influence behavior and neutralizing them before they take effect. In every interaction, the detached recognize that the opinions of others are merely reflections of their own perspective and not a measure of reality. By refusing to act in accordance with these flawed assessments, one retains independence, ensuring that actions are governed by intelligence, calculation, and intention rather than by fear, flattery, or shame. This principle is central to mental freedom, for the person enslaved by judgment is unable to act decisively, paralyzed by imagined consequences and false authority. The mind that discerns the emptiness of such judgments moves through life with a rare clarity, unperturbed by distraction, immune to manipulation, and capable of seizing opportunities that the anxious and the insecure overlook. In embracing the truth that judgment is largely an illusion, one fortifies the mind against coercion, preserves energy for meaningful action, and ensures that decisions are made from a position of strength, insight, and purpose, rather than from the whims and projections of others. Victory belongs to those who cultivate an unshakable will, a mind that does not waver under pressure or falter in the face of adversity. The world is unforgiving, filled with men who test limits, exploit hesitation, and prey upon weakness. Those who act impulsively, who are swayed by sentiment or distracted by emotion, often find themselves defeated, their efforts scattered and their ambitions frustrated. Cold resolve, in contrast, is the discipline of the mind, the steadfastness of purpose that allows one to act decisively, even when circumstances are unfavorable and opposition is fierce. It is a mastery over impulse and a commitment to principle, a clarity that enables one to move forward without hesitation or compromise. To cultivate cold resolve is to accept that life is a battlefield in which distraction, flattery, and provocation are constant threats. One must learn to see beyond the immediate, to measure consequences, and to act with precision, guided not by fleeting emotion but by calculated judgment. This mental fortitude does not rely on the approval of others or the comfort of consensus. It thrives in isolation, in the quiet determination of a mind fixed on its objectives. Those who possess it are not easily deceived, for they are anchored in their own understanding and fortified by self-discipline. Every action is deliberate, every decision measured, and every strategy executed with awareness of both risk and reward. The coldly resolute mind recognizes that hesitation is a vulnerability and that compromise without cause is surrender. It does not waver when challenged, does not retreat when criticized, and does not falter when confronted by adversity. Instead, it proceeds with a steady, unflinching determination, confident in the knowledge that calculated persistence is the surest path to success. In the pursuit of power, influence, or mastery, emotional indulgence is often the enemy, for it clouds judgment, obscures objectives, and slows the execution of strategy. Cold resolve neutralizes this risk by placing reason above passion, calculation above impulse, and objective above sentiment. It allows one to endure provocation, to withstand opposition, and to act without the distraction of unnecessary attachment or reaction. Furthermore, cold resolve is contagious, projecting strength that influences allies and intimidates adversaries. Those who sense unwavering determination in a mind recognize the futility of resistance and are more likely to align themselves with one whose path is unbroken. It creates an aura of authority, a presence that commands attention, respect, and obedience, not through coercion, but through the sheer force of disciplined will. The disciplined individual does not act rashly, yet they are swift to capitalize on opportunity. They do not react to every slight, yet they strike decisively when action is required. This balance of patience and decisiveness is the hallmark of cold resolve, for it ensures that every move is purposeful and every outcome is maximized. In cultivating this state, one must train the mind to remain unmoved by flattery, unshaken by criticism, and unperturbed by circumstance. One must embrace discomfort, reject the tyranny of opinion, and cultivate a focus that is unwavering and precise. Cold resolve is not cruelty for its own sake, nor is it detachment from humanity. It is the disciplined harnessing of thought and action to achieve objectives with efficiency and clarity. It transforms hesitation into certainty, doubt into confidence, and chaos into order. Those who master cold resolve are formidable, for their minds are impervious to distraction, their actions guided by principle, and their strategies executed with a patience and precision that few can match. It is through this relentless steadiness that one gains control over circumstances, commands respect, and achieves the outcomes that those swayed by passion or opinion can only dream of attaining. Cold resolve ensures that every decision, every movement, and every endeavor is aligned with purpose, making the individual unstoppable, untouchable, and unyielding in the pursuit of mastery. In the end, freedom of mind and mastery over oneself are the greatest forms of power. To act unshaken by opinion, to observe before responding, to focus on one's own purpose, to see judgment for the illusion it is, and to move with cold, unwavering resolve. These are not mere strategies, but the foundation of sovereignty over one's life. The world will test, provoke, and seek to manipulate, yet those who cultivate detachment, discipline, and clarity rise above. They are no longer subject to the whims of men, but guided by their own vision, acting with precision and intent. To embrace these truths is to step into a realm where thought is unassailable, where action is deliberate, and where the mind becomes an unshakable fortress. It is in this fortress that true power resides, and it is there that freedom is won, not granted by the weak, but seized by those who understand the rules of men and the mastery of self.